To put together the Fifth Knit Headband, the first step, once you finish knitting the piece, is to connect the beginning and the end. So I'm going to undo my provisional cast on, and if you're impatient like me, you'll just snip it and then start unraveling the provisional cast on. And then once you get to your first stitch in the working yarn from your scrap yarn, you're going to use a spare knitting needle. Insert your spare knitting needle into the stitch and remove the provisional cast on. So as I'm taking out the provisional cast on, I am going to place each stitch onto my knitting needle. And I'm going to repeat that the entire way around the headband until I've gotten all of the stitches on. So you'll notice my needle is going from back to front. I'm just going to work my way around. Speed things up. This is in fast forward. It's not how quickly I move, but you're going to go through the back of every stitch. Sometimes you have to detangle the yarn. You may want to trim it now and again, your scrap yarn, whatever you need to do to get around. And here I'm working on the second half. Here's my last stitch, and I'm getting them on. So of course there we go. All right. Then you pull away your scrap yarn and you can discard it. All right, so once you've got both sets of stitches, the beginning and ending, on needles, you're going to arrange it so that your headband is not twisted, and you're going to take the top stitch from each needle. So I'm taking the top half of my headband to the bottom half on the right side, and I'm going to start Kitchener stitch. I put my tapestry needle in like a knit and remove the stitch, and then into the second stitch like a purl on the front needle and leave it on. On the back needle, I go into the first stitch like a purl, take it off, and the second stitch like a knit. This one's a little twisted, so I just have to adjust it. Sometimes where I did the make ones, the stitches got a little twisted. So let's start again with step one here. I know I kind of went quickly the first time. So on the front needle, where I have the light gray stitches, I'm going into the first stitch like a knit and removing it, and then going into the second stitch like a purl and leaving it on the needle. And I'm going to do on the back, the first stitch like a purl, take it off, second stitch like a knit, and leave it on. And you repeat those 4 steps: in like a knit and off, down like a purl, leave it on. That was on the front needle. And then on the back needle, I go into the first stitch like a purl, take the stitch off, second stitch like a knit, and leave that stitch on. Those are the 4 basic steps of Kitchener stitch, or grafting our 2 pieces together. So I'm creating another row or round of knitting, and I'm working all the way around the headband in this same fashion. So I'm going to keep going. Purl, knit on the back needle, and knit, purl on the front needle, where the first stitch comes off and the second stitch stays on. I've kept my tension a bit loose as I was doing this so that I could see where I'm going. I'm not trying to pull the stitches too tight just yet. Once I've gotten to a good stopping point, maybe a couple inches in, I will adjust the tension. So here we are at a good stopping point. I have all these loose stitches. Starting from the far right, I'm going to feed my extra tension into the stitch on the left, into the piece on the left, until I've made it to the opening in my work where my tapestry needle and yarn are. And so I'm adjusting the tension here to make it match the stitches above and below. I want this to look like another new line of knitting in my work. And I'm going to pull this one tight. Not tight, but pull it to tension and then proceed. And you're going to work that way all the way around. Happy knitting!